Este es Aaron con enacomputers.com. Otro video para ti. Hoy just dealt with a customer, so quick customers are a paradox. To me, it's more stressful than if they just leave me a computer, because then they watch you work. But then if it's something quick and easy, then they're gone and you resolve their issue. But overall, I prefer customers to leave me their computer so I can just, not have to work in front of them. But another question from my YouTube channel. This deals with a laptop Toshiba hard drive recovery. It's for a specific satellite L655-S5096. They're not able to perform a system recovery, a factory recovery. They have the DVDs, and they left a long a long comment with plenty of context. It's on screen. You can check out my blog post at my website enacomputers.com, linked in this video description. It's a long one. Where shall I start? I'll just cut to the chase. In order to kick off a system recovery on this Toshiba laptop using the factory partition, you hit your 0 key. The laptop should be off, turned off. Then you hold down the number 0 key, and then you hold down the power button. And keep holding them down, and eventually it'll boot off into the recovery utility that Toshibas have. It should work. If it does not work, it could be that maybe the factory recovery partition is corrupt or failing, maybe the hard drive is failing, or maybe it's missing. But it should work. Another way is if you have disks or a USB flash drive. You can burn your own, but I think this person claimed it was RRB. They claimed that I think they had the disks, they were given to them, shipped with them, which I think most computer manufacturers stopped doing that. They're cheap now. They won't even burn you a set of recovery DVDs, but I think they said they left them with, or he burned his own. You can also burn your own. Windows has to be running and it has to be healthy, but you can, with a lot of newer computers, you can burn your own recovery media, which is I recommend highly. As soon as you get it brand new, doesn't matter. Hard drives fail. Solid state drives fail. They fail. They're not perfect. You just never know when hard drives are going to fail. So that if I bought a brand new computer, that's the first thing I would do, is burn recovery media. You can burn USB too. You can burn it to a USB flash drive, which is much faster. Actually, I recommend that you use a USB flash drive. It's much quicker. And you can do it through the utility with a lot of these OEM manufacturers. They have somewhere in the menu with their bloatware, they have an option that you can create recovery media. So a DVD, in order to start the recovery process using DVD, you would hit the F12 key. You insert the first DVD disc, and then press the F12 key until you get to the recovery menu. Now, it should work, even if the hard drive is failing or no longer usable, or it's corrupt, or there's bad sectors, or the recovery partition. It should still boot. You may not be using the right keystroke. They recommend that you hit the F12 key. And then also off the top of my head, I don't know off the top of my head what a special boot menu. Almost all computers I've ever used, actually except for Macintosh, I don't know if there's a special menu. But Dell, Toshiba, Lenovo, blah blah blah, Acer, blah, Gateway, they all have a special boot menu. I don't know what it is on a Toshiba off the top of my head. PowerSpec, it's F10. I think Dell, it's F12. Lenovo might be F11. That allows you to choose what device to boot from. So when you have multiple devices, it depends on the boot order. You can go into the BIOS too and change the boot order. but you have to know what you're doing. You have to know how to enter the BIOS on your computer. And you can change the boot order. You can make it boot off the USB or the hard drive or the DVD first, and you can change the order. Whereas the special boot menu is a nice feature, because then you can, on the fly, you don't have to change the boot order permanently in the BIOS. Off the fly, you just choose which device you want to boot from. And so that's kind of another troubleshooting step. If a computer won't boot off the hard drive, well, try to boot it off a USB flash drive or a DVD drive, just to make sure that there's nothing wrong with the computer. It could be the hard drive. So that right there, I could make a 2-hour video on this. And then another reason I'm not gonna go too much into detail is I do not have this laptop in front of me. So I have made another video, which maybe I could pull that up. I did make another video with the Toshiba, and I showed you how to perform a factory recovery. Usually it depends on the model number, but let me see if I can bring that video up again. Let's see if I go to my... I hate how YouTube changed the menu. They removed the video manager and they changed shit around. But we can search Toshiba, and not that one, this one right here. Toshiba satellite support L655-S5096 factory recovery partition. I wrote a blog post too, so you can check out that video. And I think it's the same. What was it? I know I wrote a blog post. Oh man, I didn't write a blog post. See, that's a big mistake. That's a big mistake. That was being lazy. I did search and optimize that video. That's good. But I have to force myself to write blog posts, because that's double the traffic and double the content and double the money. I've studied CPMs, and I'll give you a quick example. I made a video about this YouTube.mp3 website that got shut down for, copyright, whatever. Well, I tracked my earnings, and I made almost the same amount of money off the video as I did on my blog post. So, and then I wrote a blog post, and then I even included it in the link of the description box. So I doubled my money off that one. It received about 25,000 views just recently, like a month ago. But I tracked my income on my blog, and I was like, I just made another, I'm not going to tell you exactly how much I made, but I doubled it. Anyways, you can check out this video. It's I think the same 0. It's in this video. You hold down the 0 key, and then at the same time you hold down the power button. That's to boot off the factory recovery partition. Now, and then the manual. I linked directly to the Toshiba support page for this laptop. On that support page, there is a user guide. It only took me 30 seconds to a minute to find the support page. It only took me, took me 2 minutes total to find the manual, the user guide? If I can do it, anybody can do it. There is a very detailed multi-page manual at that link. Look for users and manuals, or what is it? Manuals and specs. It's right there. And it shows you how to perform a factory recovery using the internal partition, or off DVD or off USB. As far as disk partition, I don't fuck with disk partition. The command, you better know what you're doing. Because if you fuck with disk part, don't come crying to me. If you do not know what you're doing, you could wipe your entire hard drive data, all of it. You could wipe and delete your factory recovery partition or your C drive. So when it comes to partitioning tools, I'm not obsessed with partitions. But it does make logical sense when these manufacturers ship out computers with the factory, which is a good thing. That's a really good thing. They're cheap. They are cheap. They're so cheap that they won't even, a lot of times they won't ship you DVDs. That's how cheap they are. How much does it cost for the media? Give me a break. Cents on the dollar? But at least they have a factory recovery partition. However, caveat emptor, mechanical drives fail. So do solid state drives. That's a myth. They want you to think the solid state drives are perfect. That's not true. They have shelf lives. All you have to do is study. Solid state drives are not permanent. They have a shelf life. They only they fail because it's math. It is. They're not permanent. No. And a lot of customers bring me computers that have a corrupt hard drive, and sometimes the factory recovery partition becomes corrupt. So I wouldn't fuck with disk partition. You better know what you're doing, and I don't want to hear it. And I forgot to mention this. Any abusive comments are immediately removed. I moderate all my comments. Spam, I don't get that upset over spam because those could be robots for all I know. But if you leave an abusive comment towards me, automatic lifetime ban, automatic deletion of that comment, and I mark that comment as abuse. And if you get enough flags, if other people flag your comments as abuse, you can get your YouTube channel shut down, and that includes you content creators, you aspiring content creators with only 16 subscribers and 20 views. So you be careful what you wish for. When you attack other established YouTube content creators, they might be smarter than you, and they will mark your comments as abuse. And if you keep abusing people, eventually you may get your YouTube channel shut down, and I don't fucking feel sorry for your fucking ass. So when it comes to disk part, I've used that command, but it's only if I have to. I don't fuck with partitions. Well, it's a paradox. Even on Linux, I don't use partitions. I just use file folders. But I understand, to have a recovery partition, you have a different partition. But you better, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Be careful what you wish for, or just, you better understand partitions. You better understand what that disk part command can do. And then you're making things too difficult on yourself. Just Google search. Okay, factory recovery, Toshiba, L655-S5096. Oh, I found the user manual. Oh, the user manual on page 68, or I think it's page 61, shows me how to perform a factory recovery off the internal recovery partition. Oh, okay. You hold the 0 key, and then you press the power key, and you hold them down, and then you wait until the factory recovery partition menu, and then you just continue on. You follow the prompts. See, I don't have that laptop in front of me, so I don't know if this worked or not. I'm assuming it did because I found the manual, and I matched up the model number. Oh, okay, well, I've got DVD menu. Oh, okay, well, the factory recovery partition internal doesn't work. Okay, well, I've got DVDs. Okay, oh, I hold down the F12 key. Oh, okay, and then I continue with the prompts. Oh, okay. USB, same thing with the DVD. Oh, okay, I hold down the F12 key. It didn't take me that long to find that information out. I don't get what you're over complicating things. If you think that the hard drive is malfunctioning, well, you better study, you better learn. Check disk. You know what I'm saying? Do you have a bootable Windows disk? Do you know how to boot into safe mode? Does the existing installation of Windows still boot? Have you tried safe mode? In safe mode, you can run a check disk. I would much rather mess around with check disk than start fucking with disk part, that command. Because if you do not know what you're doing, you're going to end up deleting the C partition, which will wipe off it'll delete all your user data, and if you dare fuck around with disk part with a recovery partition, well, you just deleted the recovery partition. And if you did not have recovery media via DVD format or USB, well, then you just put yourself in a bigger hole. And your boss is already chomping at the bit, or your wife, your feminist wife, is already beating you up. She's already asking you why you haven't fixed the laptop. It's Saturday night. She gave you the laptop on Saturday morning, and you're already fucking up with her, and you're already fucking up with your boss. That's because you fucked around with commands you didn't know what you were doing, or you're overcomplicating things. Just use deductive reasoning. Okay, now I know how to kick off the restore with DVD. Okay, oh, it works, or oh, it's airing out. It might error out. Well, that could be because the media is old or the media is bad. That happens too. Or then try to burn it to USB or try to burn another set of recovery disks. It could be the hard drive's failing or the hard drive has bad sectors. But you can run a check disk on the recovery partition to fix that. I always try it off the hard drive first. It's easy, it's faster. The files are already on the same hard drive. The same files that get copied to the C drive that are on the same hard drive, so it's much faster. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I have repaired recovery partitions that were corrupt. I use the tool check disk. It's very safe. Check disk is not going to, delete your files. Disk part will delete. Disk part, that does not discriminate. Unlike humans. Humans are bigots and racists and discriminatory. Disk part does not discriminate. What you tell disk part to do, it does. And ignorance is not bliss when you just deleted a important partition. Anything else? This is just disk part. Yeah, okay. That's only if you're trying to troubleshoot. But check disk, if you are capable of using disk part, well, then you're capable of running a check disk on the recovery partition. This individual, I think, wanted to restore it back to factory. They didn't mind the bloatware, so that's where I would point you to try to kick it off, holding down the 0 key and the power button, and then kicking it off straight off the hard drive. You might get some errors, but then you can Google the errors. It might fail. But try it again. I would say this: if you do not get any errors, the recovery menu opens up, you follow the prompts, and you read the manual. That's why people write manuals. Read the user manual, because it's going to warn you. There's different, again, I don't have the model, so I'm not going to sit here and go through all the steps, and I didn't write a lengthy blog post, click next here, you've got 3 options, but you're going to have different options. I would recommend you watch this video because it's going to probably be quite similar. With some of these factory recovery partitions, you get different options. You can wipe the drive. I'm trying to think what else. You can back up. It even allows you to back up your files before you wipe it. As long as you don't fuck with the factory recovery partition, you don't delete it. You don't even mess with it. Because there's different types of factory recovery. Look for one that says it will wipe your C drive and it will reinstall all the software and all the drivers and restore your computer back to when you bought it. Choose that one. When in doubt, choose the safest option. Or when in doubt, don't touch it and take it to a computer repair professional. But if you've got that, well, unless you're trying to learn. If you're trying to learn, back up your data. Number 1, back up your data. Always back up your data. I would say as long as you hit, the factory recovery starts up, you go through the prompts, it starts down, it'll tell you how long it'll take. Depends on the speed of the computer, depends on the image, it just depends on. It could be half an hour, it could be hours, just really depends on. It depends on the health of your hard drive too. If it starts you know, copying files and you don't get any errors, and it finishes and then it restarts your Toshiba, I would say the factory partition is just fine. It's healthy. However, there could be bugs. If when you boot into Windows it's flaky, or you're missing something, or like I had a previous video where somebody ran a factory recovery and their keyboard driver didn't load. Well, I would try it again. Try it. Computers aren't perfect. So I would try it a second time. You know what I'm saying? But if it gets that far, the factory partition is good enough. What else? Same thing with DVD media. DVD is going to be slow, the slowest option. USB is going to be quicker than DVD, and probably a little bit slower than off the hard drive using the factory recovery partition, but much faster than DVD. Again, there, as long as the DVDs are not scratched up and they're not, you know, fucked up, and as long as the USB flash drive, that file system is not corrupt, you can fix those too. You can run a check disk on a flash drive. You can, as long as it has an NTFS partition. Anything else? I don't want to obsess over this one because I don't have the laptop in front of me. But all it did was take a couple of, 2 minutes, or I think I performed one Google search, and I found the model, and I found the manual. So I gave you directions on what keystrokes. It's going to be your responsibility to read the manual, read the user manual. That's why they're written. That's how I learned. I started reading user manuals. Even now, I still read user manuals because not every computer is the same. And believe it or not every, let's say you had another Toshiba and it was a similar year, similar model, it doesn't mean that the keystrokes are the same. But yeah, anytime when customers bring me computers and I try to perform a factory recovery, I Google it and I read the manual and I go over all the details because I don't want to fuck up. You know what I'm saying? I want to leave their computer the way it was. That's why I use a factory recovery. I would prefer my own personal computers. No, I don't want bloatware. I just wipe it with Derek Boot and Nuke, and then I get an I get a copy of Windows that's legit, and then I just type in the certificate of authenticity. That's it. But when it comes to my customers, no. Now I try to leave it alone. I try to just leave the recovery part, because you never know, they might want to reinstall Windows on their own, but you deleted it and now they're fucking, pissed at you. If you run into problems and you think it's the hard drive, if it's the file system, check disk. Now check disk will look for bad sectors. If the computer boots into safe mode, run a scan on the hard drive. Try to find out what the recovery partition is. Again, you're gonna have to learn. You're gonna have to learn command line. You know what I'm saying? Check disk, C:, check disk, D:. But when it comes to disk part, I don't know what the fuck this heaven crap is. Heaven file, I don't know what that is. When it comes to fiddling around with disk partition, if you don't know what you're doing, you just create another quagmire, and I'm not going to help you get out of that quagmire, because I wasn't the one that fucked with partitions, no. Anything else? No. They're in good hands, because it's possible that the factory partition is still there. It could be corrupt. Doesn't mean it's time to get all fucking emotional and angry like a little bitch. No, you just use some logic, and then I'll just run check disk on it and try to repair it. But they also have DVD media, so they've got possibly two. And so, adios.